Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning.
Morning.
How
And
are you all?
Dale. I'm sorry?
I said, how are you all?
I'm doing fine. The wedding I attended was really nice. It's my great grandson in North Carolina.
So you've been to North Carolina and back?
Yes. I left last Thursday or a week ago Thursday and came back Monday.
Did you drive down?
I'm sorry?
Did you drive?
No, I flew.
Flew?
But I can certainly agree with the assessment that flying is not fun. The airplane is okay. But it was just an experience. My two daughters came in from Phoenix on different flights. All three of our flights were seriously delayed, like over an hour. One daughter didn't get in until about 1 o'clock in the morning.
And you got apologies from all the airlines.
I'm sorry.
You got apologies from all of the airlines.
Oh, definitely. Well, maybe not. Of course, I also had a run-in with a TSA agent too. on the way back. So
What did he try to get you for?
when I signed up, I did not use my full first name. And after I pressed submit, it said everything has to be exact according to your driver's license. So I went in and there's a way to change it, except you have to wait and let them decide when to change it. So I arrived here Monday at about 12:30. At 1:53, they finally sent a notice and said, "We've cleared it all up for you now." And yet going, there was no problem whatsoever. But coming back, she was not a nice TSA agent, but the supervisor was really, really nice.
Maybe she's a nice person having a bad day.
I don't think so.
Well, it's that time for us to begin. So, Jonathan gave me a challenge today. He told me what he was going to speak on and let me pick the music. And it was an interesting challenge to come up with something that went along with his topic, and I'm not sure I really succeeded too well, but I have music for you anyway. Do we have joys or concerns we'd like to share this morning?
I would just like to say that I was very grateful that I was able to go to the wedding and festivities before and after were really nice, and the wedding was just beautiful.
Well, I know of a couple of prayer requests. One, of course, is Brent and Nancy, and Nancy's health situation and all of that. The other is Sean and Katrina McConaughey. Sean's father, some of you already know this, but Sean's father is not doing well at all. He has had a couple of strokes and seems to be paralyzed on his right side, a whole variety of other issues. And so Sean and Katrina have flown to Oregon to be with him for a while. This is a super busy time for Sean. He's got responsibilities at Quaker Haven. Of course, yearly meetings coming up, all kinds of stuff. But he's obviously where he needs to be right now, is with his parents. So we need to keep them in our thoughts and prayers as well. Jonathan is our worship leader, so if we'd all mute ourselves so we don't get feedback and that kind of thing, then he can speak to us as he's led out of the silence.
The Gospel according to John, chapter 20, verses 24 through 29. But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I can see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." Quakers don't follow the Christian liturgical year, so hopefully I can be forgiven for choosing the above passage from the Gospel according to John as a focus on Trinity Sunday, beginning the second week of the season of Pentecost. This passage is typically featured during the 50 days of Easter, following Easter Sunday. It was during this period a few weeks ago that I was reminded of how much I love the account related here, and that Thomas is my favorite of the apostles. A little background. Many years ago, one of my aunts, a theologically conservative evangelical Christian, stated to me, "You're a Thomas, Jonathan, always doubting and wanting proof." This occurred during the kind of theological debate that the two of us would often have in those days. At the time, I was a teenager and a newly minted doubter of biblical literalism. For that matter, I was a newly minted doubter of all things biblical, one of the unfortunate effects of being raised in a faith that insisted on the biblical literalism that was the subject of my doubt. Doubtless, this wasn't my aunt's intention, but I took her accusation, as a compliment. You see, I think that Thomas has been much maligned over the centuries. We know him as Doubting Thomas. You can sense the capital D there. But I can't think of a more undeserved reputation. Instead, I would maintain that we should refer to him as Sensible Thomas, also with an implied capital S. The disciples told Thomas, "We have seen the Lord." Fair enough. But considering that we're talking about someone resurrecting from the dead, is it so outrageous to expect some proof? After all, these are the same disciples that had a fairly rough track record when it came to getting things Jesus-related correct. I'm familiar with the argument that Thomas had been present with Jesus during his ministry and had been witness to any number of his miracles. Jesus was known to raise people from the dead. Shouldn't Thomas have taken it on faith that what the others were telling him was true? Wasn't his faith strong enough to enable him to believe without seeing? Evidently it wasn't. And I totally get that. I relate to Thomas's doubt and his desire for proof. Sorry, not sorry, if I had been alive at the time and I was told that folks had seen heretofore dead Jesus roaming about, I would also have asked for proof of the event. I would have wanted to see the resurrected Jesus for myself. And who wouldn't? That's not exactly something that one sees every day, not even if one has been witness to a host of other miracles. And I've never cared for the "have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet come to believe" part to some extent. Granted, by this point, Jesus was probably tired of his closest followers missing the point, denying him and doubting his miracles. But I have a real soft spot for Thomas in this situation. So what is my broader point? It's basically this. I believe that this passage has been used over the centuries to promote the concept of blind faith, which I consider to be, in its worst forms, possibly irrational and dangerous, which is not at all the same thing as saying that taking things on faith is necessarily irrational or dangerous. Rather, my recent re-examination of this story helped me to consider the ways in which we may have faith in doubt. By this, I mean both that we can maintain beliefs rooted in faith while also doubting, and that we can have faith in the value of our doubt. Doubt can serve as a test, a counterbalance to believing all sorts of nonsense. Yes, some of which comes from religion. So you may be wondering if I believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I won't make you wait until the end of this for the big reveal. I do. I quite literally believe that Jesus of Nazareth died, was buried, and rose again from the grave. And I believe this because I first doubted it. I came to a place of faith because I first left it. Like Thomas, I couldn't accept the resurrection of Jesus because other people told me that I should. I also needed proof. No, I didn't get a very late-breaking opportunity to put my hand in Jesus' side, thereby casting away all of my doubts. Rather, the proof that came to me was of a different sort, albeit convincing to me nonetheless. I came to a place of belief in the resurrection of Christ because of any number of subtleties, impressions, feelings, and experiences of synchronicity stretching across years. I became convinced of the truth of the resurrection in all of the ways that famed atheist Richard Dawkins, among others, would scoff at fact-free feelings that led me to conclude that in 33 CE, death was defeated by Jesus rising again. And I'm okay with that. Because in my opinion, human beings have access to faculties of perception that extend beyond our five senses. I would maintain that the means by which we feel our way through and to faith is one such faculty. To be among the blessed who are blessed because they believe without seeing involves, in my opinion, reliance on sources of perception that differ from physical sight, yet provide us with proof. Is this a possible explanation of what Jesus intended in the Thomas episode? Was he pointing us to a process of reaching toward truth that we can perceive and encounter only on an inner landscape? If so, this has the feel of a process to me, not a singular event. Jesus says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." That says to me that the blessed in question have passed through some sort of movement from one state, that of doubt or disbelief, or possibly simply ignorance, to a state of belief. And they have done so without the aid of physical sight, sure, but does that mean that their belief arises from no perceptual experience at all? I say that it does not. Instead, I would suggest that Jesus is, as he typically does, showing us how to go deeper into the point of what has occurred in the physical, literal context. Sure, Thomas didn't believe until he saw, but that really only serves to point us toward how much we should want to be one of the cool kids who believe without seeing, which implies a means by which we may eventually go about that believing without seeing. I think that that's the real story. And what of doubt? In my experience, doubt or even outright disbelief can serve as a forerunner for the eventual acceptance of that which at first offends our reason. This is a delicate push and pull between doubting or complete disbelief and the having of faith in something such as the resurrection. It is within this space where the pushing and pulling is occurring that we can encounter God. This is the arena into which we descend to struggle with and often against God. And that is as it should be. I would go so far as to say that is how an omnipotent and sovereign God created us to be. Human beings, which we are told in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 7 through 9, were made a little lower than the angels, are living up to our birthright when we struggle with the fantastic, the unbelievable, and the mysterious. I can't believe that God would have us do any less. If the old law of eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, then I can scarcely accept the idea that a blind faith would do us much good. But it's how we define and understand the seeing that we do, what it means to see, how we go about seeing, that can make all the difference. Sometimes seeing is believing, and sometimes believing first can lead to seeing afterward. For some of us, disbelief can be essential in finding our way to belief. So, I would encourage us all to doubt, to have faith, to disbelieve, and to believe as we're able. This is part of the messiness of living incarnate in skin and bone.
I find that I can relate to what Jonathan was sharing this morning about some doubts about the literalness of Scripture all the time. As Sylvia and I share our morning and evening devotions, which usually includes some parts of Scripture, I often find myself doubting the literal words, not necessarily doubting the message. But I found it encouraging to think that we can grow in our faith through the doubt, and not to just discount the doubt as something bad and evil. So thank you.
we've reached that time when some of us need to depart and to do other things, and we wish you well and Godspeed and look forward to seeing you next week.
Load your message this morning, Jonathan. I think Sylvia was right when she met with you a couple of years ago or whenever it was. You might fit right in here.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan, I want to thank you for your words this morning. I too grew up in a community that expected me to believe the Bible literally. My parents, fortunately, weren't that way. They were kind of outliers in the community, but the rest of the community believed that and still does. And as a consequence, I never felt like I had a home there. I always felt like, if they only knew what I really thought, they would think that my faith was less than theirs or was lacking in some way, or I'm not sure exactly what words I would have used, but I always felt like if they really knew what I thought, they would think that I'm not Christian enough or whatever. Because I've always not necessarily had doubts, but had questions. And some of the questions were doubting. So I really appreciated finding West Newton many years ago. They weren't quite as open to questions back then as we are now, I think, but it was at least kind of okay to ask questions then. Because to me, that's a really important part of faith, is not just blindly accepting what I'm told I need to, but living with it myself, finding out how it applies to my own life, and allowing God to move around in those doubts and to meet me in the places where I'm ready to hear what God has to say. So I really appreciate your sharing with us this morning. If all hearts are clear, we can end meeting. Good to see everybody. I hope you all have an enjoyable, relaxing Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.